My name is Laura, and as many of you know, I organise alumni events here at RCSI. I want to thank you so much for participating in the programme of events this weekend. We really hope you enjoyed all of the talks as well as the chance to catch up with your classmates and friends. It was a real shame that we didn't get to meet in person this year, but we are already planning for a bumper reunion event in 2022. Our hope is to invite back 36 classes to this time next year, including those classes who missed out on their in-person reunion both this year and last year in 2020. It has been the most unusual and surreal 18 months, and we have really missed seeing you all. I'm sure you would agree, Caoimhe.
100%, Laura. It has been a real shame that we couldn't hold this event in person. But despite the fact that we haven't been able to meet face to face, there are plenty of ways to stay connected with the community of 26,000 alumni that spans 94 countries worldwide. Follow us on social media, where we regularly share your stories and those of your classmates. Make sure also to let us know your postal address so you can receive the annual Alumni magazine. And don't forget to check out our weekly Alumni e-news, which will give you further details about all future events we have planned, both virtual and in person. When we were planning this event, we spoke to you, our alumni, and you told us that more than anything else, you want to hear from old friends and former classmates. So now we are delighted to share with you some messages from a few friendly faces.
My name is Veer Senik. I graduated from RCSI in 1971. I grew up in Kenya, East Africa, and then went to Dublin for my med school. And then I came to Canada, and I've been living in Canada since. I did my residency at University of Toronto in orthopedics, and I've been practicing as an orthopedic surgeon in Ontario. And I live now and practice in Toronto. I was pretty young when I came to Canada. I got exceptional training, clinical training at RCSI, which has carried me through all my residency and my current profession. The multicultural aspect of RCSI was incredible. And that was the year that we had first bunch of Norwegians who came and joined that class. And it was a fantastic experience, just meeting all different people from different parts of the world. I think our class covered most of the world, in fact. People coming from every part of the world. It was fun to be there. It was very collegial, and it was very much like a little family growing up together in the medical world. I still remember as a young medical student going into the orthopedic room with Dr. Jared Brady, and he was doing a total hip. And I walked into the operating room, and his personality and his manner and the way he operated was absolutely incredible. And he actually made me realize that I wanted to do orthopedics, and I ended up doing that. Obviously, Maura O'Brien, who was our anatomy professor at that time, she was a great influence as well. So obviously, I've been sort of leaning towards doing surgical specialties in my life. I think it was a year that there was a significant disaster in Bangladesh, and we raised funds as a class, and we did really well out of that. Years ago, I can remember, for a charitable cause, we were all standing outside RCSI and raising funds and sent that money over to them. It was brilliant. That was fantastic. Also, our class gatherings were incredible. We all pitched in, and we all had a great time. Everyone knew each other in that class of 110. There were so many of them. I couldn't name them all. But we did have some good fun. We really did have good fun. And one of the brightest guys I know is Knut Krogh, one of the fellows I knew fairly well. He was brilliant. He was really bright. We just had fun. All of us had a great time. We played hockey together. We were playing soccer together. We used to go out drinking together. We had a really good time. I'd like to say hello to every one of them because they all formed a great part of my life, an important part of my life, getting me started where I was and where I am today. And all the professors who taught us. Those are the guys I'd like to give a shout out to. I think growing up in Dublin in those times, you realized how important it was to be working hard and achieving your goals. RCSI gave us a very solid base to build up our medical careers on. We were well taught in clinical judgments. We were well taught in our theory. And one could grow from that base to whatever you wanted to achieve. And most of us have achieved that, or all of us have achieved that.
So my name is Dr. Dilip Dupelia, and I graduated at RCSI in 1976. So I'm originally from Durban in South Africa, and I came to Ireland in 1970 to commence medicine studies. And I'm currently living in Brisbane, Australia, in Queensland, beautiful Queensland, which we say beautiful one day and perfect the next, and you can see some of it behind me. So I'm a rural generalist when I was doing my full-time clinical work, but I'm now in medical administration for the Queensland government. And I actually run a very exciting program called the Queensland Rural Generalist Program, where we train rural generalists for rural and remote Queensland. And it's a very successful program, and we're now making it a national program. So I'm intimately involved in that. I still do clinical work in family practice, but I don't actually do any procedural work anymore. And I have just finished 2 years as the president of Australian Medical Association Queensland, so some advocacy and representation work. I think coming to a very traditional medical school, and of course in 1976 we only had the old RCSI building, from the background that we came from in South Africa, and then coming to a very traditional school that was quite inspiring, and we were quite in awe, I think, that we actually were in a major tertiary institute. I think that the level and caliber of the teachers, the professors, the teachers, the lecturers, the tutors that we had, where I would describe it as mind-blowing to us. They taught us with passion, and I really love that passion. And I also, there was a sense there that they knew that we had come from different parts of the world, and they knew that everybody that they were teaching had a story, and they had some significant sacrifices that they may have made, or the families may have made, to come here to Ireland to study medicine. And I think that when I reflect back, I think that they were quite empathetic towards that in their teaching, and I think that was quite inspiring for me. I remember that very well. There were quite a few professors. I mean, if I think about it, everybody will always love the traditional anatomy room, and Professor Rooney, Moira O'Brien, Professor Legg, who taught us. We always had amazing teaching over there. But I think probably Professor Harold Brown, when I actually got to my clinical years at Richmond Hospital, for him, around the bedside and the teachings that he gave us, that learned look of his, without directly addressing us, just pouring out that wisdom and that knowledge. And I can remember standing around those beds of those patients, not actually listening to him, but just looking at him and saying, I wonder if I would ever be like him one day. We didn't socialize as much as you would in this day and age, I guess, when we were back in the 70s. I think that the moments that stick out to me is probably postgraduate moments. I can remember at each reunion, that very, very first night when we get together at the examination hall at the RCSI, the first function that is held. And I remember one year it was held at the rooftop at the Guinness factory. Just that people walking in from every corner of the world that you had separated, and you meet them at that reunion, and that camaraderie and that feeling that our friends are together again. Those moments, that very first session that we have in our gatherings is absolutely special to see everybody just hugging each other, smiling, being happy, and know that we've been reunited. I think I would actually put that as one of the highlights of my collegiality at RCSI. Bjorn Hofstad, who actually lived with me for 3 or 4 years in Ireland, he went through medical school very seamlessly, and he seemed to not have to study, but actually still won the medals for some of the subjects. And he was a great help to me, and I think that his talent was quite amazing. And I think that the other memory I have is whenever I went into the RCSI library, you could always see Ursula O'Brien sitting in exactly the same chair daily, completely engrossed in the books and studying really, really hard. And I would put Bjorn Hofstad and Ursula O'Brien as the brains of the class. Well, the jokers have to be some of my Irish colleagues in the class. There were several. I don't know if I can separate them out. If you think about Aidan Hampson, Ronnie Brown, Dennis Cowboy, John O'Hara, they were just hilarious. They made us laugh. They made us welcome. And you never know what they were going to be up to next. I'd like to say hello to Lawrence Tang. He's in Nanaimo on Vancouver Island in British Columbia. I had the pleasure of visiting him once, and he has visited us in Brisbane with him, Kamala and him on 2 occasions. And it's always lovely to see him. I'd like to give a shout to Mary Leda, who has been a class ambassador and has been so hospitable to us whenever we come to Ireland, where she opens up the house for us, her home, and makes us very welcome. Very special people. I think RCSI has been amazing. It has certainly changed my life and gave me the opportunity. I've always wanted to be a doctor, and coming from South Africa, which in those early 70s was apartheid-torn South Africa, to be then coming to Ireland where there was no apartheid, and to be given an equal opportunity to actually pursue my dream to become a doctor, and then come to Australia and continue the work that I have ever since then for the past 45 years. I think that solid background and the opportunity that Ireland and especially the college gave us will never, ever be forgotten. I don't think I would be where I am today or have achieved what I have achieved if it wasn't for that sound education that I actually had.
I'm Elsa Sandset, and I graduated from the class of medicine in 2006. I am from a small town right outside of Oslo in Norway called Asker, and I live very close by there, close to Oslo. I work as a consultant stroke neurologist and at the stroke unit at Oslo University Hospital, and I'm also a senior researcher with the Norwegian Air Ambulance Foundation. Well, there are many things I could talk about when it comes to my time at RCSI, but I think for me, the sense of community we had with the very international environment and a lot of people being far away from home, we became each other's family in a way. And I think that is perhaps one of the most favorite things I have with me. And which is also, we have a strong sense of community still, even 15 years later. I think my favorite time at RCSI was during our clinical rotations and the clinical years. What I think is very special with the time at RCSI is that all the students, as a student, were very embedded in the hospitals and in the different teams in the hospitals. which is quite unique, especially compared to Norway, where students are not as much a part of the normal daily life in the hospital. So what I enjoyed the most was definitely my clinical rotations and being part of the teams. When it comes to a favorite professor, I think Professor Chris Thompson is one of the people who influenced me the most. I was terrified of him, but he was also such a good teacher, and he really pushed me to become both a better student and a better doctor. No, I was terrified of him. He told me he told me you most likely won't pass my final med exam. But no, I think he was brilliant, and he really pushed us. But I learned so much, and it's really one of the few people I think really influenced me when I was at RCSI. You knew if you were doing good or if you were doing poorly, and he called me a rabbit in headlights. So I use that now still when I give talks. I think on the social side, I think my absolute favorite memory is the ballad session in Final Med when we were all on stage. It was so much fun. It was slightly crazy, but it's probably one of my favorite kind of social memories from RCSI, from our class. What I found, we have a Facebook page for the class of 2006. And during the pandemic, it's been a place where we've shared experiences and also given each other support. And this for me has been, it's back to the sense of community that we had in RCSI, and the feeling that you have colleagues around the world who have been in the same situation as you have yourself. It's been a great support, especially during the past 1.5 years. I think I'm extremely thankful of my time at RCSI. For me, it has opened my eyes to a more international career. I have had visiting fellowships in Sydney and in Nottingham, working with fantastic people within stroke. I am currently the Secretary General of the European Stroke Organization. I don't think I would have sought the international environment that I have if I had not had my time at RCSI. So my time at RCSI has given me, it opened my eyes to the international community, and it also has given me an understanding of how healthcare system works and how research works, and how this world works on an international level rather than just in Norway. So I think I'm extremely thankful that I chose to study at RCSI, and I'm so happy that I went abroad and not did my undergraduate years in Norway.
When I went to RCSI in 1975, I came from school in London, where I grew up. And I completed my training at RCSI for 6 incredible years, and then worked in Dublin for a further 6 years before moving to Boston in the United States. I've now been in Boston for over the last 30 years, working here as a gastroenterologist. My career path in Boston led me to become a hepatologist and a transplant physician. I'm currently working at the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston, where I'm a professor at Harvard Medical School and the chief of gastroenterology for the Harvard system. It's really hard sometimes to imagine that I graduated from RCSI 40 years ago. This is our 40th reunion for the class of 1981, and very important. And I'm obviously deeply saddened that I'm not there, because when I look back and I think about my class, what I think about is just purely friendships, the amazing friendships, many of which have lasted these 40 years, and many of whom I still see regularly. And I can say that if I was to characterize what I got from RCSI besides a superb education, I would say lifelong friends. You know, when I think back to RCSI, I mean, many people might say they really enjoyed the clinical work, being in the hospitals, but I have to say that I was a bit of a basic science geek, and I really enjoyed biochemistry. Maybe that makes me an outlier, but I just liked it. And, I really enjoyed my interactions with Paddy Collins, Alan Johnson, and, the Krebs cycle, metabolism are still key components of what I talk about to my students today. And it's really interesting how that foundation has hung with me all of these years. When I think back, the class of 81 was a small class. I think we ended up graduating about 82 physicians from our year, but it was a very tight-knit class. And, we used to do a lot of stuff together, and that stuff was highly variable. It could be the famous post-exam pub crawls down Bagot Street, which usually ended up with a lot of very unwell students the next day. Or it could be just the sports, the purifoy, the interactions that we would have, the hospital parties. It was just, I can't say one thing that I really remember, because there's just too many of them. There are just too many interactions with too many friends. And I think that our class was fairly unique in that it wasn't multiple cliques. People got on with each other. And I think it's fair enough to say that we were a strong, unified group of people. Sometimes when you think about your class, you think also about all of the relationships that occur within the class and within the classes below you. And I think 1981 really stands out for the number of people that got married within the class, myself included. I married Claire Tempany, but also for the relationships with between our class and other classes, and all of the, I call them inter-RCSI marriages and relationships, which is really pretty fantastic. The other memory that I think is incredibly important is the memory of our losses. We did have losses, like every class has. We're 40 years out, so obviously we've had more, but we had early losses. And those losses have really stayed with me all these years. I think of Marilyn Butt, tragically lost in a car accident. I think of Jim Allen, tragically lost in a plane accident. Dermot Roden, who died of an unexpected malignancy. These are all friends that we spent so many years with that never had the same opportunity that we had to go out and develop long careers. And I think of them. It's often easy as you get older to think back, because you like to reminisce about the good times. And I think that they hold a special place in our memories. When we look back 40 plus years and we think about the things that have shaped us and what has led us to become the physicians and the people that we are today, there's little doubt in my mind that my 6 years at RCSI, my friendships, the support of my friends, and the environment have all helped to make me who I am today. I look back at this and I think that I had really good friends who helped me through hard times and taught me some key concepts that I've tried to follow within my career and my life. And those are to be honest, to speak up when one sees issues that require a person to speak forthrightly and deal with them, to be empathetic to people from many different cultures and countries like we have in the United States and like we had at the College of Surgeons, and also to try to be the best person that I can be to represent what to me was an incredibly important period of my life, both from an educational point of view and from the point of view of actually growing up and becoming the person that I am today. I'm very grateful to RCSI.
Hi, I'm David Joyce, and I'm going into final year medicine in RCSI. So I was born in Dublin, and I've lived my whole life pretty much in Dublin. And I joined RCSI about 4 years ago now, and before that I was in school in Sutton, just beside Howth. And then I was in Clontarf as well for school, and I've lived in Clontarf pretty much my whole life as well. Yeah, I live at home during the term, which can have its perks sometimes, but sometimes as well you would like to move out, but most of the time I'd say I enjoy living at home. I suppose if I had to pick one thing that I love the most about RCSI, probably the people, and not just like classmates and stuff, but also patients as well that I've met throughout my time in RCSI. So definitely classmates has been such a highlight because they make the experience so much better, like different events, going to class. You know, when you find it tough to get up on that Monday morning at 9 a.m, you know, at least you know that in the lecture theatre you'll be sitting next to your friends. But also definitely on hospital placements, different patients I've met. Like just a few months ago when I was allowed to, when we were on the wards for obs-gynae, working with different patients while they were pregnant and being with patients for that journey as well was such an amazing experience. And the different stories that patients tell you about their lives is always fascinating to hear. So definitely I'd say people that I've come across would be one of the highlights of my time in RCSI. Before we started placement, I really enjoyed anatomy was one of the highlights because it's so different to anything you've ever done before, because it's very practical, and working with the cadavers and in the anatomy lab was something I'd never done before, and probably something that most people would never have done before as well. But since we've started placement, I've been fortunate that I've enjoyed every placement, and I've had the issue where I don't know what I want to specialise in because I've enjoyed everything from psychiatry to obs-gynae to GP placement. I've been really fortunate that I've enjoyed all of the different topics that we've studied and the different patients that you meet. And then on the wards, working with the teams as well has been enjoyable. So I mean, to pick one topic that I've enjoyed since we started placement is really difficult, because I'd also be tying myself down to speciality, which I don't want to do just yet. But we'll say maybe obs-gynae was good fun, definitely, because it's so unique to anything we'd studied before. There've been a few non-academic things, I suppose. One great thing I did was I went on study abroad in Bahrain for 3 months. So when I was in second year, I lived in the campus in Bahrain. So that was the only time I wasn't living in Dublin for my life. And that was great experience. The experience of different culture was really interesting. As well, to study medicine from a different perspective was great fun. And I met loads of amazing people over there. I had a great time. I lived on my own for the first time, which is always fun. So that was a great experience. And then with friends in Dublin, 14 of us from RCSI Dublin, we went to Italy interrailing for 10 days, which was a great experience. We started in Milan and worked our way down to Italy, down to Sicily. So that was great fun, seeing all the different cities, and then just spending some time together that wasn't academic focused was always fun as well. Anytime I've had an issue, there's always been someone I can turn to in the class, and we have a class group that you can always send a question into, and more than one person is always willing to help you. And even if you're in the library and you're stuck in something, there's always someone you can turn to for help. I'd also say welcoming. Since the moment I arrived in RCSI, I've always found people being very welcoming to me, and I've always offered, let's say, to sit down next to you or to chat with you in between lectures, or if you're on placement and you don't know some people in your group, there's always someone who'll say, oh, you can come with me, we'll pair up together. So definitely I'd say everyone's very welcoming. And I'd say maybe surprising, because every time I talk to someone in RCSI, I find out something interesting about them. Everyone has a great story to tell, whether it's what countries they lived in, how many languages they speak, what they studied before they're in RCSI. So I'd definitely say surprising, but in a good way, kind of surprising. Sometimes I feel like everyone else is the smartest in the class, the way everyone's so intelligent, but definitely I'd say some of the students who've done degrees before definitely would stand out as very smart, and they're also really inspiring, the way they've done other degrees and how they use those skills from other degrees. Sociable, I would say there's a few people who are sociable, but I suppose the less said to the staff RCSI, the better. But definitely there's always someone in the class who'd be willing to go on a night out if you need it, and sometimes you do need a nice break. Anytime I think about how much the alumni have given and the opportunities, I'm so thankful, because all the different opportunities I've been able to avail of because of the alumni. So for example, like I mentioned, the Bahrain trip was an amazing opportunity that I wouldn't have been able to afford without the support of the alumni. I also was able to spend some time in New York doing research, and that was something as well that was funded. I worked with alumni on that, and they helped fund that trip as well. So that was an amazing time that I got to spend outside of Dublin. as well. Different placements has always been possible. And I suppose just going around Ireland and being able to afford that. And also I suppose the main thing is being able to focus on my academics during the year because of the alumni with this financial support, and not having to worry about having a job during the academic term has meant that I can fully dedicate myself to studies and I can enjoy my time in RCSI as much as possible. So definitely I'm always immensely thankful for all that the alumni give and everything they do to support us.
And on that note, I am sad to say we have reached the end of the Virtual Gathering 2021. As always, it was our pleasure to connect and reconnect with alumni all over the world who have welcomed RCSI into their lives, albeit virtually, and to share with you the lovely thoughts and messages that we have received from reunion classmates. RCSI is the common bond that we all share. And in times like these, we have learned that it is the ties that bind that matter most. Please do stay in touch. You know how much we love to hear from you. So for now, it is farewell, but not goodbye. We look forward to meeting you all again in person soon. Slán go fóill.